Hey guys, it's Julio, and today I'm super pumped to be showing you how to make music like Raito. So, as usual, the project file and samples from this video in the description. And yeah, let's dive in. So, the first thing we got going on here is this kick, which sounds like this. And so, it's a pretty straightforward, simple kick. Basically, the way that I made this is I just took this kind of like punchy, sort of techno-style kick, where it's got like that really hard attack that just really slams. That's kind of what you want for this. You want like those really hard hitting, like not like the techno kind of like warehouse kicks where they're more reverbed out or they're more just sort of like obscured like that. You want something just tight and punchy like this. Yeah, that's just kind of more of like a, like just sort of a real strong hit like that. And so what I did was I took that and I put it into a simpler. And then when I put it in the simpler, I put this filter on it with a bit of an envelope. So you can see we got the low pass filter and it's just set like that. And then the envelope is on there. So basically what's happening is at the start of the sound, aka the transient, the very like, that very first sort of like hit at the start of the sound, you're still hearing like the whole sort of like high frequencies. But then as it goes through the sound, the filter is dipping down and it's just going down a little bit lower. And yeah, it just kind of dials us back a little bit. Like, this one was a little bit too intense for that kind of, like, Raito style stuff. Where, like, the kick is still really punching through like that, but it's more of, like, a thump than, like, a really, really sharp, high-hitting sort of kick, if that makes any sense. So, yeah, other than that, I didn't really do anything else. Like I said, it's just a matter of finding, like, that really punchy, kind of, like, powerful, ravey techno kick that just sits in the mix nicely. The next thing we have here is the snare, which sounds like this. So this is really simple. It's just a snare sample I had. This is actually not really making a whole lot of sense on its own. And if I just play it with the kick, or even with that, it may not make a whole lot of sense. But this is really working with these breakbeats, which we're going to talk about in a second. I'll play those on their own. These things, it's just kind of like sitting on top of those and helping to beef up the snare a little bit. This is something I'll talk about more when I get to the breakbeats, but in this style, breakbeats are really important. That's how you get that kind of like ravey, sort of like weird drum loop sound. And when you use them in this more sort of modern sense, and again, you'll see this when you see like the processing I did here, you have to do things to sort of like layer them and make them just a little bit cleaner and a little bit crisper. And like I said, just a little bit more modern. Like, you can't just use the breakbeat straight out the sample pack like they could in the 90s. It doesn't really work as well now. So yeah, the snare is just like an example of that. I'm just adding the snare on there to sort of further define the snare. If I turn it off, yeah, you can hear it just doesn't have as much impact there. So that's that. Next thing we have here is this 909 chord kit. This is just actually Ableton's 909, just the standard one that comes with every version of Ableton. And what I did is I just have some hi-hats here, so you can see I have like these little closed hi-hats doing the 16th notes and the open hi-hats on the upbeats. And then one trick that I did here was I layered the ride with the open hi-hat. So this is kind of a cool thing for techno with a 909. As you know, the 909, very important for techno. But yeah, if you layer the open hi-hat with a ride, you kind of get like the best of both worlds. Because you get this like smooth high-end from the ride, but then still that like sort of, I guess more like punchy, I want to say, sound that you get from that hi-hat. Like just that nice 909 hi-hat sound with still like some nice smooth high-end on it. So that was why I did that there. And yeah, I just think it sounds pretty solid. What this is in here for mostly is just like energy. Like a lot of the hype and like real energy, like I'm saying, is in the high-end. So having some fast hi-hats like this is just a really good way to bring that out. And without them, you'll hear the whole mix just falls a little flat. So yeah, and this is also one of those kind of things, like I was saying, like if you're going to use breakbeats and have that be kind of like a big part of your sound in this day and age, you kind of need to have like some extra stuff to it just to kind of give it a more modern, crisp kind of feel. And yeah, that's what this is doing. So the only processing I have on here is on just the whole drum rack. I just have this EQ8, which I set up to be kind of like a bandpass. So it's like a wide bandpass basically. I have this high pass here, which is cutting out all the low end. And then I have this low pass up here, which is doing a technique that I actually haven't talked about in a while on this channel, which is just cutting off like the very high highs on these, so it makes them sound a little bit more lo-fi. You can hear when we cut out those like really high highs there, it's just a good way, again, to make it sound kind of more lo-fi, because when you put stuff through like the processing that makes things sound kind of lo-fi, like through a tape machine or through a cassette deck or something like that, it usually tends to get rid of those very high-end things, or even it just doesn't capture them to begin with. So, yeah, doing that with an EQ is a really good way to kind of emulate that. So that was what I did with those. The next thing we have here is this first breakbeat, which sounds like this. So, like I was saying before, breakbeats are really important for the style. And for this track, I have this one and this one. I'll show you them both at the same time, basically. And what these do is, they're old loops from, like, old jungle, like, drum and bass or hardcore, old school hardcore tracks, or from old sample CDs, or from old, like, soul and funk records, or all that kind of stuff, jazz. There's a million different places you can find breakbeats from, but they're really important for Raito's style and for this kind of like future rave style, I guess you would call it. I don't know. But yeah, they're really important. And so basically what I've done here is I've gotten this kind of nice one. Here's what it sounds like dry. From like some hip hop pack. Or from somewhere. And what I've done is I've taken it in here and I've sped it up and pitched it up. You can see I used the repitch there. And it's set like that. And then I've just put a bit of effects on it to kind of make it like a little bit, again, just a little bit more crisp, a little bit more modern. So the first thing that we have going on, here's what the dry break sounds like. And the first thing we have going on here is this resonator. And so what I'm doing here with the resonator is I've just brought it in and I've set the note really low. I set it to A sharp. To be honest with you, that was just the one that sounded the best with this break, like with just kind of like, I guess sonically how it sounded. That was the best pitch I could find. And then I added these two little things here. Those are just kind of adding a bit more like high end to the sound, so it's not just all in one octave. And yeah, then I have the dry wet on 50%, and that's pretty much it. I turned the decay time down a bunch because you don't really want like that. But yeah, basically what this is doing is just kind of adding a more like metallic sort of like, I guess like crisper texture to the sound. You're not hearing it much now, but you'll hear it a lot more when I turn on this next thing, which is a saturator here, which sounds like this. So what this is doing is it's beefing up the break a bunch. You can hear it's kind of like adding some energy to it. Basically, I actually used a little bit of negative drive on this one, but then I have the wave shaper here. I'm just kind of set it like this. So again, it's like bringing out that resonator, and it's also bringing out that kind of like metallic sound that the break sort of has to it just naturally. Like, I'm just trying to accentuate the stuff that I really liked about this break. After that, I just have an EQ8, cutting out some low end and bringing up a little bit of high end. And that's pretty much it for that. This is sort of like the, like, mid-range stuff. Like, this is more of, like, the power and, like, the energy. And then I have the second one here, which is more of, like, the high end. So you can hear that one. It sounds like this. And this is pretty simple. It's just this break. Like an amen break from some old jungle thing, I guess. And all I did with this one was I just put it in here, and I cut out a bunch of low end with this EQ8, you can see, and then I boosted a bit of high end, and then I have this auto pan here set up to do sort of like a fake sidechain, like pump effect. So I have it on quarter notes, and I have it on the saw waveform, and that's inverted, so it's going up. And then we have the amount set there, and the phase is at 0, so it's just affecting the volume. And yeah, it's just a really simple way to give it a kind of fake sidechain effect. I didn't want to sidechain anything to this kick here because the kick kind of had a bit of decay, and that can make the breakbeats just have a little bit of weird stuff. And really anything that you sidechain with that is going to be a little bit strange. So yeah, I just did it this way. And yeah, those are the breakbeats. I will show you a little bit. I did a bit of chopping here. Like you can see, this is only that little thing. So I just took this part and did like that, just copied it over, and then I grabbed this whole little chunk and put it there. And that's pretty much how I made that pattern. It's kind of a cool way to do it. You know, you kind of like take it and just chop it up in the arrangement. It's a really simple way to do it as well. And yeah, so then the next thing we have here is the bass, which sounds like this. So I was trying to make one of those like ravey, kind of like darker basses like you hear in a lot of Raito's tracks. And yeah, I think I pretty much got it down. Basically what we have going on here is we have this little instrument rack. It's just got these two bass layers. The first one here is this Reese bass, which sounds like this. And then I have a sub underneath that. And then I've got a bit of processing on the group of those. So the Reese bass looks like this. basically the way that I made this is I use actually some FM and an operator, and I just have 2 saw waves here. Here's what they sound like, just dry. And yeah, what I've done is I brought up the second one a bit. You can hear it's doing that kind of like harsh FM sound, and then I've turned the fine tune up. So that's how you get that like motion. And you can hear like when it pitches up, it plays it a little bit higher, like, or it plays it a little bit faster, excuse me. But yeah, when it pitches up, the modulation's a little bit faster. And yeah, it gives you that cool kind of like warm, ravey bass sound, I guess. So then after that, I have a bandpass filter on there, which is set like this. I got the frequency there and the resonance there. Pretty straightforward, just kind of filtering out the high end and focusing on that sort of like low mid that we want. And then after that, I just have the saturator, which is set like this. I have a tiny, tiny bit of drive, and then I've used the wave shaper to just kind of like give it a bit more grit, basically. You can hear it's just kind of like changing it a little bit sonically and making it a little bit more raw. So then the next layer that we have here is, like I said, this little sub. This is really simple. All it is I have a sine wave here, and then I added a saturator on that. And all I did with the saturator is I just gave it a bit of drive, and then I messed with the analog clip a little bit, just to give it kind of like a little bit more harmonic content. What this does is it helps glue it to this layer, because this layer is very harmonically rich. There's a lot going on. And then if you just have a sine wave coming out of operator, it's like not really harmonically rich. There's only the fundamental harmonic going on. But if you add a little bit of extra harmonics on top of that using saturation, which this is what saturation does, it just adds harmonics on top of the sound, then you can help kind of glue it to the other layers. That was what I did. You'll also notice on the Reese bass, even though I have a sub underneath it, I don't have an EQ cutting out any low end, and it's still working fine. The reason for this is because the bandpass filter is just honing in on this range in the frequency spectrum, so we don't need to high pass it afterwards because that's all that's coming through anyway. So then after that, on the group here, I have a bit of saturation, just kind of a bit of drive, and then I messed with the analog clip a little bit, nothing too crazy there. Just kind of helps to glue these together some more. Like, you can really kind of have, or never have too much saturation with this style. It's just a really good way to add kind of like a nice sonic texture to your sounds. That works really well here. And then the next thing that we have after that, and the last thing, is just a bit of auto pan, doing that same kind of like faux side chain like I had on the second breakbeat. And yeah, so then the last thing that we've got going on here is this little FM stab, which sounds like this. So I made this with operator. It's just a really simple kind of like FM stab. I'd heard something like this in a few of Raito's tracks, and so I want to show you guys how to make it. A few of you have actually asked me about these kind of sounds. And yeah, so the way that I made this was with operator. What we have is just this little sort of like pluck stab thing I made with 2 sine waves. You can see I have the envelopes set like that, and the second one I have the coarse pitch on 4. And yeah, that's it for inside of operator. Here's what it sounds like, just dry, and then I'll go through and add the effects and show you what's going on. So here's what it sounds like just coming out of operator. Just like a simple kind of like FM donk type of sound. After that, I have the saturator, which is beefing it up and making it a little bit more like angry sounding, I guess. It makes it sound a little bit more analog, really. Like, this went from kind of like a kind of digital and like cold sound to a little bit more something that I would say reminds me of like a DX7 or like a more classic kind of like FM synth like that. It just has that more kind of like, I guess, textured sound. Like, it has more character to it now. And the way I did this was just by using the drive here to add some gain and beef it up a bit. Like, here's making it a bit louder. And then I used the wave shaper down here to kind of shape it using that curve. If you use the wave shaper with FM synthesis, you can really kind of make any sound you want. Like, it's the most nuanced way to really mess with a sound, if that's what you're into. Like, kind of playing with harmonics and just adding, like, stuff in that kind of really, like, scientific and, like I said, just nuanced way. So yeah, so then after that, I have a bit of chorus to kind of give it some space. Pretty straightforward. Gives it a more, like, old school kind of sound. And then I have this ping pong delay, which is on half notes, 8th notes, excuse me. Wow. I just cannot talk today. But yeah, I was doing 8th notes, so just kind of like do like that. Then after that, I have an EQ8, which is cutting out just a bunch of low end and then boosting the highs. I just kind of wanted to add a bit of highs with this sound because, like, the thing is, when you're trying to make stuff that sounds old school and kind of like ravey especially, a lot of times it can end up being a bit dark. And so I've been trying to add a lot of high end to this track to just make it kind of, or to the different elements in this track, or at least just boost it to kind of bring that out so it still has those crisp, modern kind of like high highs. And like I said, it just gives it a more like futuristic and really more like relevant sound. Because like I said, it's gonna stand up more with like modern tracks as opposed to old tracks that are a little bit darker. So yeah, then after that, I just have an auto pan doing a faux side chain, as they say. And yeah, that's pretty much it for that. So that's really gonna be it for this one, guys. I just want to make a quick tutorial, sort of show you some techniques I picked up on by hearing Raito's music. And yeah, so thank you again, everybody. Make sure to let me know what you think of this video in the comments. Make sure to like this video, as well as subscribe. Check out my sample packs in the description, as well as my social media, which is on the screen right now. And yeah, thank you again, everybody, and I will see you tomorrow with another tutorial.